Hi, this is Joe Shannon. I'm a lawyer, a husband, a father of 6 kids, and I also host a podcast called Opening Statement with Joe Shannon. Please consider listening to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and any other folks that host podcasts. Just Google Joe Shannon and podcast, and you'll find it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Very excited to interview Jon Hatami, who came to all of our living rooms and through Netflix with a very sad story, but a necessary one about our children and the future of our children in this country, and how important it is that each person has a role in taking care of our country's children. So I'm really, really thrilled to welcome you, Jon. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. I'm really appreciative that you're having me on this show. Thank you so much.
Well, the gal that produced our show, Sydney Bettino, when she saw the Netflix series, says, I want this guy on our show because he's a true guy that's a stand-up guy. He's a dad. He's a lawyer. He's all that. And I like the public servant part of you too. You're a military guy. You grew up you were born in New York, grew up in California, but then you joined the military. We're in the military police. Then you end up going to college, getting a degree, and then going to law school in Nebraska. So you've been all over the country, this great country. Then you went back to LA. What made you want to go back to LA after being in Nebraska?
One, I love California. I love Nebraska too. I had really good times there. But I don't like the cold, and it gets pretty cold there. New York gets pretty cold too, but Nebraska gets very cold and windy. I like the beach. I like to surf, and it's nice because you can also go skiing here too. So it's a really great state because 2 hours one way you're at the beach, 2 hours the other way you're in the mountains. Even though I was born in New York, I think I'm mostly a California kid. I grew up out here. This is my home. There's a lot of issues with California, but in general, I love being here and working here.
How far are you from the beach?
I'm about 45 minutes, so about not too bad. About 45 minutes from the beach. We live in the suburbs because it's better schools for the kids. I also don't make enough money to live by the beach, but I wouldn't mind if I could, but we're about 45 minutes.
Yeah, so just a little backstory. I grew up on the West Coast, so I grew up in Eastern Washington, in this place called Yakima, Washington, which is it's about a 50,000 person town when I was growing up. It's a high desert type place, and ended up in Chicago because I went to law school out in that area and met my wife, who's 100% Italian, and she was kind of connected to her family big time. So we ended up in Chicago, but I'm taking this on the road. I'm in Seattle this week, and another connection that we have here is my father was a social worker, and one of his jobs for, I want to say, 10 or 15 years was keeping kids out of abusive homes. In fact, I got a picture of him right here. So this is my father.
Wow.
And he was 98 years old. He just passed away last Friday, but he's one of the heroes too, that really did the work that you're doing and that what a lot of these great public servants are doing. And so I had this connection that I said, listen, I want to interview Jon just because I know how important it is that the people that came into Gabriel's life could have made a difference. And so I want to talk to you about a number of things, but I want to talk to you about kind of what makes you tick, what makes you effective as a lawyer, what kind of habits do you have, what kind of future do you look at, a lot of stuff. Hopefully we can jam it in here, but I wanted to just start the conversation off with you worked your way up to end up being involved in this case, and that was a long trial, wasn't it, Jon?
It was. First off, my condolences for your dad. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Hey, listen, 10 kids. I'm number 9. My dad was the best all-time dad. Like I said, a social worker. Came home at 5 o'clock. You know, we hang out, we talk. I was till the tail end, so we were buddies at the end. Lived with my sister until he was 98, and he had 4 or 5 of his kids praying the rosary with him when he died in my sister's house. So it was all good. It's all we're gonna do is service tomorrow, graveside, because they're not allowing funerals up here in Washington State. But yeah, so you know, it's all good. It's a really I was blessed to have 2 parents that were basically saints and really blessed that way. But my dad, I tell you, he had some stories to tell about when he was a social worker. You know, all anonymous, obviously, but just so thrilled to be able to keep some of these kids, you know, out of harm's way. But I want to talk to you about that. So you got involved in this case with Gabriel Fernandez. First of all, that must have been quite a burden on you to accept the responsibility of that case at such a young age for a lawyer, in my book.
Yeah, I tell a lot of people it was just, I'll never forget Gabriel for a lot of different reasons, but one of them was just in the office. I hadn't been a prosecutor for that long to get a case that big. In Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, we have so many cases. You can get pretty big and important cases early on in your career. I'm not really sure I realized how big the case was when I got it, and maybe that was a good thing. I was working up in Antelope Valley, which is sort of the outskirts of LA County. And a lot of young prosecutors work up there because a lot of people don't want to, for all sorts of different reasons. It's kind of far from the city. And so I happen to be the most experienced prosecutor doing child abuse or domestic violence type cases. And so that's how I ended up getting the case. But I think me not being in the office for a long period of time, I think was a good thing, because I really just handled the case at first kind of like any other case, just because I didn't realize media-wise and just importance-wise how important the case was. So I think that was sort of a good thing at the beginning. But it was a long journey, that case. You're talking about 5 years from beginning to end. So really long journey in my career being a prosecutor. Also around the same time, my wife gave birth to our son, our first child. And so that was sort of a tough situation, because November 2012, my son was born. The case happened in May 2013. And during that time, my wife was on patrol. So she was working 2 to 10. It's called the PM shift. And so, you know, I'd come home, pick John up from daycare, and then, you know, I'd give him a bath and feed him and everything. And I was I was doing all the dad, you know, duties, mom, dad duties during that time. And my wife wouldn't get home till about 12 o'clock, midnight. And so dealing with that case and then dealing with being a first-time dad, there was a lot of challenges, a lot of emotional challenges with the case. And just being a young prosecutor, just not having to handle a death penalty case or a case that big, there was a lot of challenges. And then the case got moved to Los Angeles. So we'd commute a lot from Antelope Valley Courthouse to Los Angeles Courthouse for the case. That was my first grand jury. I had never done a grand jury before. I didn't even know we had grand juries. So it's funny, I give this story, like, you know, in LA, we do prelims. We don't do grand juries, we do preliminary hearings. And so even though I was born in New York, where New York obviously has grand juries, I just didn't know that there was grand juries. Even when I was a DA for a long period of time, I didn't know until somebody told me, oh, you know, you can go to the grand jury. I was like, oh, we have grand juries? And so I didn't even know that.
Wow. So I looked at your resume, and you were a civil lawyer like me for a while before you went into the DA's office. And, you know, I always tell folks that are thinking about becoming lawyers, and is to just go around to different places and see what feels right to you. And it sounds like you did that, and then you finally found out what felt right.
You're totally right. I think it's hard when you're going to law school, and I really, really enjoyed law school. But it's hard when you're going to law school to figure out what you want to be. I sort of had an idea when I was getting out of the Army that I wanted to do something with children, but I really wasn't sure what that was going to be. And then even in law school, I didn't know. It's hard to kind of figure out what you want to do and what you can and can't do. You just, I mean, you learn about the history of the law, but you don't really learn about what type of lawyer you want to be.
Right.
And so I clerked for a judge for a year for the Court of Appeals, which was a really, really fun. And then I did civil for between 2 and 3 years, both in Los Angeles and in New York. It wasn't rewarding, I think, for me. I just felt a lot of what I was doing had dealt with money and people arguing over money. And not to say that it's not an important job, but I don't know, for me, I thought sometimes, and I'm religious, so I thought sometimes, does God really want me to do this? Is this what my purpose is?
Yeah.
Just by, I think, luck, or maybe God was looking out for me or something, I found that the DA's office was hiring. And I was actually thinking about maybe becoming a police officer or getting the FBI. So I was kind of looking at that too, probably more the FBI, just to help people, to do something with people. But the DA's office was a perfect fit.
That's perfect. So how does your faith life fit into your professional life?
So that's interesting. My mom, so I was raised Catholic. My mom's Catholic, but I'm Lutheran now. It was just, I think it was easier for me and for Roxanne because it's hard to get married Catholic. There's a lot of requirements. And so Lutheran there's a lot of similarities between being Lutheran and being Catholic. And so we have a church here called Christ Lutheran that we go to. My children were baptized there. It's what I tell people is I believe it's important to believe that there's something bigger than us. I try to be open to any type of religion anybody wants to practice because I think that's important. But I think it's important to believe that there's something bigger than us. And I think it's also important to my job because, a lot of times in my job, we're dealing with what we can do on this planet as humans. And sometimes it doesn't turn out maybe the way you want it to. We don't always end up getting justice for our victims. And that's just the way life is. But I think inside me, and I try to tell victims and family members, I think there's something bigger than us. And so I believe that people will have to face whoever you believe God is when the time is your time. And so I think that for me, it gives me good strength that even if I do lose a case, and hopefully I don't, but even if I do lose a case, I have that faith to believe that I think still the right outcome will happen. Maybe not on this planet, but somewhere else.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think, faith plays a large part of my practice as well. So in my practice is dealing with, I represent people in my law firm life that are in horrific crashes and all that type of stuff and wrongful death cases. And it's just so sad, these situations these people are in. But, all the strength that I get from my life as a father and as I'm running a law firm, all of that strength comes, it's God-given. And it's, the step that it, for me is to make is that I'm very grateful for all the gifts, especially, my parents, my family, my beautiful wife, my 6 kids. And then everybody that's on my team that works with me. I mean, they're all a gift, and my job is to help everybody with their gifts. And so I think there's a really practical side to the faith too, that what you so eloquently said is that hey, it's about the fight. It's about putting forth the best effort you can in the fight. You're not going to control who wins and loses the fight. You're going to do the best job you can, which, obviously in Gabriel's case, I mean, you had a lot of different things. I mean, I tell my clients, I say, listen, I will fire you if you lie to me. I cannot be fighting two different places, but you didn't even have a big part of the file in Gabriel's case, which is a kind of a tough place to be, fighting two different areas. How is that? How is that going? Is the relationship mending between you and the folks that you work for?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a real, I think, important question. My wife being the sheriff's department, I have a lot of friends, who are police officers, just because my job. Who I work really close with a lot of homicide detectives, both in LAPD and LASD. And it was really tough because before that, I will say, hands down, anything I ever asked for LAPD or LASD, they gave it to me. And I'm the prosecutor, right? So it's like I never really felt, even though I would see some documentaries and some movies and things that were happening, for me personally, I always felt that they were always honest and they had integrity. And if I asked for anything, they would give it to me. And we were always, upfront with everything. I never felt that anybody was like hiding anything from me. This was the first time that I started asking for something that right away I felt that there was a problem, that they were hiding something from me. And I think that was really, really difficult. And caused a lot of problems, major problems during the pendency of the case. I lost a lot of friends. A lot of people had a lot of issues with that. I think time heals everything. I really do. Some things it doesn't, but most things it does. I think most of the police officers not only realized that I did the right thing, but they realized that was the right thing to do. Most police officers involved in the situation have apologized. Most people didn't understand stuff that my wife was going through. I'm now helping to train new sheriff's recruits. I just did a class 2 weeks ago, over 100 brand new sheriff's deputies. And I have a 3-hour class or a PowerPoint on patrol techniques, testimony techniques, and child abuse techniques. And so I do believe people are coming around now to realizing that I did the right thing and it was the right thing to do. But it took a long time. When you're going through it, especially in 2016 and 2017, that was bad. There was a lot of my wife was going through a lot of stuff. I was going through a lot of stuff. People were being really mean. People had threatened my wife. They had the captain call her in and say, hey, if people don't roll out and help you, you need to let me know. It was really emotionally, it was hard. I couldn't understand. I didn't understand, when you're doing the right thing, it's hard to understand why is this happening? But I think you can see in all these different police issues that are happening, and some are even happening recent. I think there is this culture where most of the good police officers are willing to kind of cover up or hide the small few who do bad things because they don't want the media to show this information, so supposedly they would look bad and they would get embarrassed. But I think I always try to tell people, it's not the people who bring out information that are embarrassing anybody, it's the people who do it. When you do something, you're embarrassing yourself. I don't embarrass anybody. I just put out the information. But I think that I try to teach police officers, why do you want a small group of bad people inside your department to infect everybody else? And I think it's important for people to see that. But most police officers are good people. I really believe that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I the thing is, as lawyers, we all make mistakes too. And, you're right that when you do make a mistake, you got to lead with hey, I made a mistake and I'm sorry. And then it's up to us also to forgive people when they make mistakes. Unfortunately, when you have a situation that was so many repeated mistakes in Gabriel's case, I'm glad that you made the next move, which was, I thought the proper move was moving for the law so that there could be some restitution for some of these kids that, some non-economic restitution, which, listen, I'm in the business of restitution basically with what I do. And so the non-economic part of anybody's life is way more important. I mean, do you actually work so you can pay your medical bills or your lost wages? No, you work so you can spend time with the people you care about, and then grow old with your wife or your husband, and then see your grandkids and all that type of stuff. That's worth a lot of money. So I'm really pumped that you decided to jump in and say, listen, let's make it so that there's some restitution for kids if something happens to them. Tell us a little bit about that law.
So it's real important, like what you said. I mean, since I've worked civil, and you have to understand, to make somebody whole, especially in our society, to help them out, especially if they've been harmed. You need to do things monetarily to help them, especially you're talking about a lot of underprivileged children who go through major either physical or sexual abuse. They need to be made whole. And in order to do that, you need to get monetary damages for them. And so it's incredibly important as a prosecutor, not only to help victims in court get justice on the criminal aspect of it. My job is also healing. And I think part of the healing process is to look out for victims and their family members and make sure even after the case is done that they're taken care of. I think a lot of prosecutors, sometimes the case is done and then that's it. But they have to still go on with their life. And so to provide them with counseling, to provide them with living expenses, to provide them with expenses that they can't find a job, to provide them with expenses because of emotional damage. It's very, very important. And I had seen before that law a lot of times where judges were either not awarding the proper restitution or striking restitution amounts because they claimed it wasn't supported by the law. And so I really saw an area where the law needed to be changed.
Where does that money come from, John?
So the money most of the time for the law I created comes from the actual defendant. So whoever the defendant is, that person is liable both criminally and civilly, basically, to make the victim whole. We do have a restitution fund throughout the state that also helps victims, but the law I created has to do with defendants in general.
So that could be, for example, would it just say though that during a criminal case, you could have the criminal phase, and then will the judge determine the restitution, or the jury determine the restitution?
The judge determines it, and with the help of both myself and usually if they have a civil attorney. Many of my victims usually get a civil attorney sometime around the end aspect of the case because of restitution. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the civil attorneys know me, and I work with them. I bring them into court. I have new cases now where I actually try to work with the civil attorneys, and I let them sit in the table with me if they want to get certain things like transcripts or information, because it helps with their case. Sometimes it's very hard for them to get discovery, and so I do assist with that because it's a very important aspect of making a victim whole. But it makes it easier too for the civil attorney if they can get a restitution amount awarded by a judge, where it's actually an order from a judge. It does help. But the judge makes the restitution amount.
So one question I had for you. So there was the part of the documentary that kind of hit home with me was, so my daughter is she was a junior high teacher, and now she's a high school teacher. But the teacher that was reporting all the damage done to Gabriel, and you could tell that it was just, she reported it and she thought something would happen, and it really never did. What kind of things do you think that a teacher needs to do in those types of situations to make sure that a doctor actually sees the little boy or the little girl?
That's a really good question. I think Jennifer Garcia, the teacher in the Gabriel case, I don't think she'll never forget Gabriel, and she'll never forget that incident. I think it will stick with her forever. It's a tough situation. Hindsight being 2020, some of the things I try to tell teachers is if you do contact either CPS or DCFS, whatever your Child Protective Services organization is called within your state, and you feel that you're not getting the proper response, call the police. Because the police has another aspect to child abuse. DCFS or CPS works on one aspect of child abuse, but law enforcement works on a totally different aspect of child abuse. They look at it as more, is this a crime or not?
All right.
So it's good to have two organizations investigate child abuse. And I think one thing that Jennifer looks back on that she wished she would have done is called the police, because that may have made a difference in the case. But I always tell all teachers are mandatory or mandated reporters. In most states, they are in California. And it's just suspected child abuse. It doesn't mean that there's actual child abuse. It's that you suspect based on observations or whatnot that a child is abused. You should call the hotline and go through the proper procedures. And so there can be an investigation. I know sometimes it's uncomfortable for individuals, but it's better to do that to save a child if you can. And then if they're not getting the response that they want, I think calling the police is another appropriate recourse. And I think it's something that teachers should do. And then obviously, I think also at least document it or make a report to their administration, if it's the principal, vice principal, whoever that is, without divulging, a sensitive information, but at least report it up her chain of command. So now you have another layer of somebody else and somebody else's eyes looking at it to maybe think, hey, maybe we need to do something different or do something else.
Right, over report rather than under report. That sounds like the move.
Right.
Yeah. And so, hey, listen, one of the parts of the documentary I really liked too was, I felt bad for Gabriel's father, who was incarcerated at the time. Have you had contact with him since this all went down?
So, Chris, I'm very close to Chris. Alejandro. I'm very close to Alejandro's brother, which is Chris and Alejandro, and then you have Arnold or Arnaldo. So Alejandro and Chris are his brothers, and I'm really close with them, and I talk to them a lot. I just talked to Chris last week. Chris is the foster parent or legal guardian for both of the siblings, for Gabriel, Ezekiel, and Virginia. Arnaldo, the last time I talked to him, which is Gabriel's dad, was the sentencing because he got reincarcerated. There were some other things that he committed, and as a result, there was cases brought against him, and he was reincarcerated. I think he's getting out at the end of this year. So I personally haven't talked to Arnaldo since the sentencing, but I have talked to Chris, I have talked to Alejandro, and I've talked to Arnaldo's parents who live in Mexico. I know that Arnaldo's doing okay in custody.
Good.
But we haven't personally talked. Part of I will tell you that I'm very big in integrity and following the rules. And one of the rules is, as a prosecutor, I can communicate with family members and people involved in my cases, but I can't get involved in their open or other cases.
I get it.
One, I can't show that I'm showing any type of favoritism to help them.
Right.
And two, I try not to, I don't want to get involved in messing up the system or whatever else is going on with his situation. So I think, and they understand that, and I think that's good. And I care about him, and I want him to be okay. But I haven't contacted him since he's been in custody. on this new case. But when he gets out, hopefully I'll reconnect with him.
Well, cool. So, hey, listen, let's shift gears here a little bit. Let's talk about your fun life. You've got a great wife. You've got kids. Are you thinking about coaching any of the teams that are your kids are going to play on?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
What kind of sports are you going to be coaching?
So Jonathan plays soccer. We were just going to get him into Pop Warner football, but this whole thing kind of, broke out and it's like, just changed everything. And he plays t-ball. And so I'm starting to have a little bit less cases now, moving up in the DA's office. So it gives me a little more ability to do other things. And so we really were kind of gearing up to this kind of Pop Warner, tackle football thing that my son really wanted to do. He really likes, we're big Pittsburgh Steelers fans, so he really likes football. And
That's
then
cool.
I'm a big Nebraska fan, so I like the Huskers. So anyway, so I was going to start, helping with soccer and helping with t-ball, but things kind of fell through. So I'm not really sure how this year's going to go. But yeah, I mean, and then my daughter, she really likes gymnastics and she likes dance. And my wife played softball. She was really good in high school. She played softball. She was really good shortstop. So I bet Lindsay will end up playing some type of sport too.
Well, this is what I do with my kids, John. Hopefully you'll be able to do it too. So I live in Chicago, but I usually try to drive the Oregon coast at least once every 2 years. We get in the suburban, we just start driving. So I'm thinking maybe, hopefully, let's pray together that Nebraska opens up and they have a big season this year, and that you get your son and your daughter and you drive to Nebraska, do a little tailgating, go into.
My kids are right here for a minute. I'm sorry. What's up, guys?
That's right.
You want the water turned off? Okay. Hey, can I take 2 minutes?
Take off for a second. Yeah,
I'll come right back. Okay.
That's no worries.
Come on, guys.
Well, we're taking a break here. What's really cool about this interview in my book is that this guy is a family guy. He's a prosecuting attorney. He's a military guy. This is what America produces. I'm telling you, this is great. So loving this interview, and I hope you're liking it too.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries, John. So listen, see if you can figure out a way to do that drive all the way to Nebraska, go to a Nebraska Cornhuskers football game. And I think the kid will be hooked on football forever after that. Don't you think so?
Yes. No, I've been trying to get everybody together to do that. And so I think I would like to have done it this year, but maybe next year.
Right.
Take them all up there. They'd have a blast. And I think you're right. Then he's going to be totally addicted.
Yeah, and then you said and then you could probably do a twofer and then go to Three Rivers, and go to a Steelers game, and then this may be Ben's last year.
I know.
So you may have to get out there. Now, my son, who's 11, was a huge, and I think he still is a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I don't know why either, John, but he's got so he had all this stuff in his room. He goes to bed in jammies. He's 11 years old to get in Pittsburgh Steelers jammies. I got to take him there too. So we'll see if it works out.
So we went, they played San Diego last year, but Roethlisberger was injured, but we went last year and saw them in San Diego. Not in San Diego, not out here in LA. I forgot, the Chargers, but it's right.
Yeah,
here.
Right.
It's at the old soccer stadium. So we went, we saw them there, and they had a really good time. But the kids haven't been to a Husker game. I think that last time I saw the Huskers, I think they came out here and played either SC or UCLA, and I went to that game. But yes, I'd love to take them to Lincoln. It's a really nice town, and football Saturdays are great there. It's a really good family event. So
all right, we'll close this up, but I want to, you're a smooth talker, Jon. I could just tell. But tell me about the smooth talking you did to get your wife to say, "Hey, listen, I do." Tell me about the proposal. How'd that all work out?
Okay. So I never really thought that I'd find somebody that I wanted to marry. I was like a little older, and in so many different places. And I met my wife in court. It was Department A11, which was the third floor Lancaster Courthouse. She was a bailiff. I had a case in there. And so we had been dating for a couple of years, and we were going to go to Las Vegas. And on the way driving there, you do come close or pass by the Antelope Valley Courthouse. And my friend called me and said, "Hey, you left a file in your office and you need to pick it up because you have a case coming up on Tuesday." And so I told my wife, "Hey, we got to just stop at the courthouse before we get to Vegas. I got to pick up this file for next week." And she was like, "Okay." And so we drove to the courthouse, and I asked her, "Hey, you want to just come in with me?" And she's like, "Okay." And so we went up to my office, and I acted like I was trying to find this file. And I called my friend, and he said, "Hey, you got to go into Department A11. That's where the file's at." And so I had talked to some deputies already, and I got the key to the courtroom. It was closed. I think it was it was a holiday, but it was a Saturday. And we went down to A11, and she still didn't figure out what I was doing. And I'm like looking around for this file, and finally she's like, "Where's this file you're talking about?" And she turned around, and I was down on one knee, and I proposed to her in the same courtroom where I met her. And so we definitely had a good trip to Las Vegas.
How long a pause was the answer, buddy?
I don't know if I remember that part. I just know she said yes. So it's like you block all that out. Anything to do with that, you block out. But
that's awesome.
The yes part I remember.
So that's great. So you basically got engaged to her in the place you met her.
That's right.
That's awesome. Well, listen, hey, Jon, thanks so much for spending time with us. I know you're a busy guy, especially, being a dad and, with the double shifts with you and your wife. Listen, we're all rooting for you, from Chicago, New York, LA, we're rooting for you. And I'm hopeful that your career, just every day is just a day that is memorable and that you're protecting the good people of LA.
I appreciate that, Joey. I mean, I really like the podcast. You seem like a great guy. Very, very positive, and you're a dad. And so I'm really happy that we got to meet each other and talk. And thank you so much for all the words of encouragement. It's really, I appreciate it a lot. And I don't know what else to say, but be safe. I hope you and your family are safe, and hopefully we get through these times and get back to, I guess, normal. I mean, I'd like for that to happen.
Oh, you know what? I can't. I mean, listen, I'm so ready to be done with the masks, to be done with everything, and I want everybody to be safe and all that stuff. But I really want to get back to watching some baseball, going to some baseball games, going to all that stuff, and then basically let my kids go back to school. I mean, I'm so ready, and so I hope for your sake, for your family's sake, that and you guys can see each other again. That would be great, because I know it's this double shift thing. It's
right.
But thank you so much, and I'm sure, and we will touch base again, Jon. You haven't seen the last of me, buddy. I'm going to catch up with you.
That sounds great, Joe. I appreciate it. Hopefully, if you come out here once, we can hook up, meet each other down at Hall of Justice or something like that. And
well, come out to Chicago. We'll go to a White Sox game.
I love Chicago, so it's a really nice city. Great food. You guys got some great restaurants there. So
yeah, and we get some great. And so the basketball used to be really, really great if you saw The Last Dance, but the baseball, the White Sox are really up and coming, man. They're going to be something else. Hopefully we're playing baseball this year, so you'll see them. So if there's ever any Angels games, and you can check out a White Sox game, get out there. All right?
Okay. You take care of yourself.
All right. See you, Jon. Thank you for listening to the opening statement with Joe Shannon. You can find us on the internet at shannonlawgroup.com or telephone our office at 312-578-9501. Have a terrific day.